All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, 21 years ago, the New York Giants found their next franchise quarterback at the NFL draft as a draft day trade with the San Diego Chargers resulted in Eli Manning coming to the Big Apple. And exactly 21 years to the day, the Giants are hopeful that they found another franchise quarterback on this past Thursday night. They selected quarterback Jaxson Dart. Now, like Manning, the Giants are getting their hands on another former Ole Miss product in Jaxson Dart. Now, in 3 years at Ole Miss, Dart was 28-10 as a starting quarterback, which included helping the Rebels set a school record with 11 wins this past season. Now, the question is going to be, will revisionist theory work for the Giants, and will another former Ole Miss quarterback be the way to go for the Giants? There's a very good possibility. I mean, you look at it, the Giants came into this offseason knowing that they had to find their quarterback of the future. The jobs of general manager Joe Shane as well as head coach Brian Daboll, for all intents and purposes, are on the line. I said it then, I've said it during, and I will continue to say it now. I feel like it was a mistake by the Giants organization to continue to hold on to quarterback Daniel Jones as long as they did. Why? Because whenever you bring in a new head coach and a new general manager, you typically let that duo bring in their guy at quarterback, whether it's free agency, a trade, or more often than not, they like to draft a guy early. But no, the Giants were hell bent on trying to put a square peg into a round hole and trying to quote unquote fix Daniel Jones. And of course, we saw that Daniel Jones was not fixable. From that standpoint, now in year number four or heading into year number four, Shane and Dayball have who they feel is their guy at quarterback. So the question is going to be, was it the right move for the Giants to trade back into round number one to get Jaxson Dart? Of course, we know that New York used the third overall pick on edge rusher Abdul Carter. You look at it, I'm not surprised by the Giants trading back into round number one. You figure they got Dart at number 25 with the trade with the Houston Texans. And of course, the Giants were slated to pick early on in the second round. They gave that pick to the Texans. So it didn't cost you that much draft capital. It did cost you some draft capital, yes, but not that much. And to give you an idea as far as how teams felt about Jaxson Dart, the Los Angeles Rams were set to pick right behind the Giants at number 26. And right after New York jumped in front of them to make the selection of Dart, the Rams traded out of the first round. So it makes you wonder if the Rams had their eyes on Jaxson Dart as well. So it's one of those where I feel like that in that position for the Giants, I think it was either going to be Dart or Shador Sanders. But even before the whole draft process, it sounded like the Giants had soured on Shador Sanders, and it looked like Dart was going to be their guy going forward. It's it's one of those for me. If you're the Giants, you don't have to throw Jaxson Dart to the Wolves per se right away. Why? Because you signed Russell Wilson. You signed Jameis Winston. Okay. And for all intents and purposes, I expect Russell Wilson to be the Giants starting quarterback in week number one, barring injury. And honestly, if Russell Wilson is hurt, I do believe it would be Jameis Winston. Okay. But with that said, if you're Jaxson Dart, you come in, you don't have to be the starter right away. I do think before the end of this season, Jaxson Dart will be starting for the New York Giants. But nonetheless, you have an opportunity to learn from two veteran quarterbacks in Russell Wilson, one and Wilson, who is a Super Bowl champion. Okay, so now you have an opportunity to learn from two vets of the game. You know, Brian Dayball, I'm sure he's going to pepper you. You got Mike Kafka in that building as well. and you want to try to get up to speed. You have Malik Neighbors on the outside. I think now the Giants need to find a way to utilize wide receiver Jalen Hyatt. I think he was tremendously underutilized, in my opinion, during the Daniel Jones era. They have a young tight end in Theo Johnson, who people have talked about. So there are there's opportunities, or there will be opportunities for Dart to get on the same page with the guys at the skill position. You look at Dart, what he brings to the table. Like I said before, 28 and 10 as a starting quarterback. He's going to have his ups and downs. He had his ups and downs, at Ole Miss. And at the end of the day, Jaxson Dart isn't a guy that quote unquote wows me as a starting quarterback. I'm not going to sit up here and say, hey, this guy is the next coming of John Elway, but nonetheless, uh, to me, I still think he's an upgrade as to what the Giants had at quarterback this time last year. And honestly, overall, what the Giants have right now at quarterback is an upgrade in comparison to what they had last year. I said going into last season, the Giants had the worst quarterback room in the National Football League, and it showed as they only won 3 football games last season. So you get Jaxson Dart in round number one. We know about Abdul Carter. And then I like what the Giants were able to do to start round four of the NFL draft as they went out there and they got Arizona State running back Cam Scatterbo. And it was when the run on running backs began. I said last season Scatterbo was going to make a team happy for drafting him. It just can't. It was just going to be a matter of when he was going to be selected. You're talking about a guy last year, first team All Big 12 with Arizona State, rushed for more than 1,700 yards for the Sun Devils. He was also Arizona State's second leading rusher. And getting back to Cam Scatterbo as a runner, we're talking about a guy who's 5'11", about 220 pounds, very thick lower body, averaged nearly 6 yards per carry last year for the Sun Devils. And it's not just the carries, it's also the yards after contact. Okay. He's not going to be Brandon Jacobs. And of course, some older Giant fans know about Brandon Jacobs and what he meant to those two championship teams with the Tom Coughlin, Eli Manning era. But I'll tell you like this, you're going to have to gang tackle this young man in order to get him down. And as the game progresses, okay, when the opposing defense wears down, Cam Scatterbo begins to heat up. And just to give you an idea of the impact that Cam Scatterbo will have for the Giants. You go back to last year's Peach Bowl in the college football playoff. Arizona State lost that game to Texas in overtime. He, being Cam Scatterbo, was named the MVP of that game. I'm just going to give you his line: 30 carries, a buck 43, 2 touchdowns, 8 receptions, 99 yards, and he also threw a 42-yard touchdown pass. So I think the Giants definitely have themselves a player right there. I talked about this the other night, and I will reiterate it again. I like the addition of Abdul Carter third overall because now you have really beefed up your pass rush if you are the New York Football Giants. You're talking about Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, who they just picked up his fifth-year option on, and Brian Burns, and not to mention Dexter Lawrence in the middle. I said it before, and I'll touch on it again. Dexter Lawrence is already a guy who commands a double team. You bring in Abdul Carter, you have Kayvon Thibodeau, and you have Brian Burns. It's going to be imperative for Giants defensive coordinator Shane Bowen to make sure all of these guys are on the field at the same time. Because if you can put Burns, Carter, and Thibodeau on the field at the same time, somebody's going to get to the quarterback. And that's what the Giants need to do. They need to find a way to heat up opposing quarterbacks, especially in this division where you're talking about you got Dak Prescott at quarterback in Dallas, Jalen Hurts at quarterback in Philadelphia, and Jaden Daniels in Washington. And I think having a front that's going to be able to heat up opposing quarterbacks, it's going to change things for the back end of that defense in the secondary. They're going to get that additional half second or second in coverage to go out there and break up passes and possibly get interceptions. So I like that addition right there. And the Giants are high on Jaxson Dart. So let's see how that works out going forward. I think the Giants, at the very least, are going to be much more competitive than they were last season. And honestly, there's only one way for them to go, and that's up. You figure they finally have who they feel is their franchise quarterback. Me personally, I think they should have got in on the fun in 2024 when we saw six quarterbacks taken in round number one. The Giants did not do that. So let's see if Jaxson Dart is going to be the way to go. But nonetheless, overall, pretty solid haul this year uh, at the NFL draft for the Giants. My biggest question is, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll did a pretty good job at the draft. Did they just draft these guys for their replacements? That's going to be the biggest question because my thing is this: how much improvement are we going to see from the Giants here in 2025? And will that improvement be enough for Shane and Dayball to keep their jobs? We have to wait, but nonetheless, pretty strong showing for Big Blue in Green Bay. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for chiming in and tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. I guarantee you it is greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. That also goes the same on Instagram. As you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. And if you follow me, I'll give you that follow right back. Also, there's a sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365, and you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. And continue to check me out on this platform as well as other social media platforms for this week, as I will be discussing a lot of things post NFL draft. But once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.